So fellas, since we've just had UFC 319 and Khamzat Chimaev becoming the new middleweight champion, I thought we'd go through the fights to make after UFC 319 matchmaking, every winner from the prelims and every winner and loser from the main card. The timestamps on screen. And we'll go in there with the first prelim winner, Karin Silva. Gets a controversial win over Dion Barboza. I thought Dion Barboza should have got the win, but Karin Silva wins the fight. I think next for Karin Silva, we give her a fairly decent step up in competition against Miranda Maverick. I think this makes sense for Karin Silva next. Like I said, Karin Silva, she was one of the better prospects in women MMA. Then she lost to Araujo, beat Dion Barboza, but she has kind of fallen off in the last two. Miranda Maverick, similar position, was on the rise, lost to Rose Namajunas in the most recent fight. So I think this makes sense. We got to give Karin Silva a bit of a step up against Miranda Maverick, and I think Miranda Maverick would probably win this fight. Karin Silva hasn't looked good in the last two, and to be fair to Miranda Maverick, she lost to Namajunas, but it was a fun fight. She made it competitive, fell short to the elite. Karin Silva hasn't really looked good, and she hasn't even faced the elite yet. So I do Karin Silva versus Miranda Maverick. Bounce back fight from Miranda Maverick. I could see her definitely winning this fight against Karin Silva, but if Karin Silva beats Maverick, it's probably going to be someone in the top 5 next for Karin Silva. And again, I think the styles would be kind of make this an interesting fight. Karin Silva obviously known for submission ability and high output striking. Miranda Maverick, pretty good in the feet, but really good wrestler. So I think the mix of the styles will be quite insane between the two of them. So Karin Silva, Miranda Maverick, step up for Karin Silva. I get that fight done. Then for Drakkar Klose, beats Edson Barboza. Not too much to brag because, I mean, it's, 40-year-old Edson Barboza on a 2-year layoff at 40 years old. But I do Drakkar Klose against one of these kind of better unranked 155s because I feel like for Drakkar Klose, he's talented, but he's never going to break the top 15. I'd do him against Mateusz Rebecki because I feel like Rebecki is in like a very similar position to Drakkar Klose in the sense that he's really fun. He's unranked at 155, but he's never going to break the top 15. So I feel like you match them against each other, it's going to be a banger of a fight. And I think it makes sense. Drakkar Klose, apart from that brutal loss to Yoel Alvarez, he has been winning pretty consistently at 155. Obviously, I'm not saying he needs to get someone in the top 15, but I think he needs a bit of a step up from Rebecki. He's one of the most entertaining fighters at 155 right now. Every single one of his fights are a banger. He just lost a close fight to Chris Duncan recently, so the time frame is similar between the two of them as well. And I feel like, again, they're both in a very similar position. They're never going to break the top 15, but they're both unranked, they're both entertaining. Rebecki, very dangerous dude everywhere the fight goes. Drakkar Klose, good wrestling, has good boxing too. So I'd do him and Rebecki. Drakkar Klose, Rebecki, and I think the winner of this fight obviously gets close to the top 15, so I'd get them booked against each other. Drakkar Klose, Rebecki, get the fight done. Alexander Hernandez brutalizes Chase Hooper, doesn't brutalize him, but knocks out Chase Hooper. He's now on a 3-fight winning streak, which is quite a big comeback for Hernandez. The guy went from arguably getting close to being cut from the UFC. It's now been on a 3-fight winning streak and knocking out one of the better prospects at 155. I think for Alexander Hernandez, he's only like 1 fight away from breaking the top 15. So I'd do Hernandez versus Diego Ferreira. That's the fight I'd do for Hernandez next. He just knocked out Chase Hooper, which is impressive. Like I said, Chase Hooper was on like a 5-fight, 6-fight winning streak, and he was one of the better kind of prospects coming up at 155. So for Hernandez to knock him out and to be on a 3-fight winning streak as well, I know some of those fights are against bums like Kurt Holloway and Austin Hubbard and everything, but 3-fight winning streak, knocked out one of the better prospects at 155 in Chase Hooper. You've got to give him a step up in competition for Hernandez next. And Diego Ferreira, who was supposed to be on this card against Bobby Green, I think Bobby Green pulled out. So, and if you look at Diego Ferreira's career as well, in his last 3 fights, lost to Grant Dawson in the top 15, but apart from that, he's been brutalizing some of these guys unranked at 155. So I think this is like the final hurdle for Hernandez. If he can go out there and beat Diego Ferreira and maybe even do it in good fashion, you're probably going to give him someone in the top 15 next. 4-fight winning streak, 2 decent wins, beat Diego Ferreira. That's probably someone in the top 15 next for Hernandez. And for Diego Ferreira, I think I'd probably favour Ferreira to win this fight. He's got very heavy hands. He's a really good grappler. I just think he's overall better and more experienced than Hernandez. So it is a big step up for Hernandez, but I guess that's what you need. 3-fight winning streak, knock out Chase Hooper. Him and Diego Ferreira, I'd do that fight next. Again, similar to the time frame thing, Diego Ferreira was supposed to fight on this card, so you can rebook this fight. Not rebook it, but book this fight. Maybe for like November, December this year. Hernandez, Diego Ferreira, winner gets someone in the top 15, at least for Hernandez. I'd get that fight done. And again, both very well rounded, both been looking good recently. I think this fight makes a lot of sense. Lupita Godinez beats Jessica Andrade in quite a close fight. Again, could have gone either way. Lupita gets the job done. It's probably going to be like a top contender next for Lupita Godinez. I'd probably do her against Tatiana Suarez next. I think that fight makes sense. Lupita Godinez, she had lost to two fights a couple of fights ago when she lost to Janda Robert and Mackenzie Dunn, but she's now on a 2-fight winning streak, beat Polastri, just beat Andrade, and she's now going to be in the top 5 of the strawweight division, going to be fighting up as well. So you've got to assume that it is going to be a top contender next for Lupita Godinez, and considering that Tatiana Suarez obviously just lost her title fight, got dominated by Zhang Weili, she's going to need to fight down. So I think this just makes ultimate sense. It's a step up against a top contender for Lupita Godinez. It's a step down in competition for Tatiana Tatiana Suarez. And I think the fight itself for women MMA standards would be quite good because they've both got like a pretty similar grappling style. But Tatiana Suarez is one of the better wrestlers in women MMA. She comes to maul people, takes people down, mauls people, great submission ability, very dangerous, not very dangerous, but kind of dangerous on the feet. Lupita Godinez comes to scrap every single time, swings for the fences, has quite a fun grappling style. So I think not only would be this be like a fun fight, like it'll be entertaining, but it could also like maybe solidify a new top contender, because if Godinez can beat Tatiana Suarez, then she's going to be on a 3-fight win streak. She's going to be ranked like, what, number 3 in the division. It's probably going to be a title fight next for Godinez, so I think we give her a top contender against Suarez. Bounce back for Suarez, step up for Lupita Godinez. Very similar style, makes sense. Lupita Godinez, Tatiana Suarez, get that fight done. And then for Mikal, this guy's had a complete career turnaround. This guy went from arguably nearly getting cut from the UFC to now being on a 2-fight winning streak, both by first round KO. For Mikal, let's give him what he asked for. Him and Marvin Vettori. I don't see why not. He's just gone out there and knocked out GM3, and he was dominating the entire fight. Dropped him a couple of times, eventually went for the finish. He's now joined the Fighting Nerds, and he rocks the mic after the fight and calls out Marvin Vettori. And you know what? I don't mind the call out. Marvin Vettori is in a very bad career space right now. He's on a 3-fight losing streak where he got beaten pretty comfortably in all 3 of those losses, and even before that he was 2-2. He's in a bad career spot, just lost to Brendan Allen at UFC 318, so again the time frame kind of makes sense for Marvin Vettori. He's now ranked number 13, he's coming off a 3-fight losing streak, he's going to have to fight outside the ranking, so I'd do Mikal versus Marvin Vettori. I think this makes pretty good sense. And you know what? I don't think Mikal would be that big of an underdog in this fight, because Mikal, I've said this before, even when he was losing, he has got dangerous hands. He is quite a dangerous boxer on the feet. The only problem is he had a murderer's raw at middleweight. You know, he had to face the likes of Shara Magomedov and Michelle Pereira and Kevin Holland. He just kept getting these killers back to back to back. And now that you've kind of given him someone at his level and joined the Fighting Nerds, he's looked amazing. So let's give him Vettori. I think Vettori would probably win this fight because of the output that he has and the fact that he is more well-rounded and experienced at the higher level. But I say, why not? You know, give Mikal someone in the top 15, give him Vettori. If he can beat Vettori and get in the top 15, that's going to be a massive career turnaround for Mikal. It could also be a comeback for Vettori. This is probably the lowest level he's had to fight in a while. So, yeah, Mikal, Vettori. I don't mind the fight. Mikal wants to fight. It's the easiest fight Vettori's had in a while. Get the fight done. Get it done for later on this year. Sisakayev, his second win in 5 days, second finish in 5 days, may I add. Stepped in on 5 days' notice at UFC 319, gets the job done, gets the submission win. So for Sisakayev, I'd do him and Cody Brundage next. I know Cody Brundage is like, you know, he's not a great fighter to debut against. It's not, doesn't really mean anything if you beat Cody Brundage, but you know, if you look at Cody Brundage's career, he's lost 4 of his last 5 fights. He's not in a good career spot. He's probably one more loss away from being cut from the UFC, which is why I've put him against Sisakayev, because I feel like this is the perfect opponent, which is like Frodo potential for Sisakayev. I think Cody Brundage is like the perfect guy to test him about, because even though Cody Brundage does lose, he is still pretty dangerous. He's got powerful hands. He's a good wrestler. He isn't high level by any means. It's a very winnable fight for Sisakayev. So I feel like this is the perfect fight to test him. If he looks good and he dominates Cody Brundage, well, good. It shows us that he's UFC worthy. It shows that he has got a bit of potential in the middleweight division, and he can go from there. If he looks bad against Brundage or even loses, then it shows us that he's a complete fraud and needs to get out the damn company. So this is the perfect fight to test Sisakayev. There's no need to rush him. There's no need to force him into these fights too soon. Him and Brundage get the fight done. And I also think if he does beat Brundage, which he probably would, it's a good opportunity for him to create a highlight reel, which is what I feel like he needs. So for Sisakayev, don't rush him. Put him against Brundage. Let him finish Brundage. Get Brundage out the company. Give Sisakayev a step up after that. And then for the main card, Kaya Sakura fucks up everybody's parlays and proves the point that we should never ever bet on fighters coming over to the UFC from different organizations as he loses to Tim Elliott. It's going to be like a step outside the top 15 now for Kaya Sakura, which is a massive fall from grace. I think somebody like Andre Lima makes sense next for Kaya Sakura. He's lost his last 2 fights. Losing to Pantoja's one thing, not really too much shame in that. But getting finished by Tim Elliott, that's another thing. 2 losses in a row, 2 finish losses. And the fact that this guy, a year ago from now, was this big Japanese star from Rising, this superstar. And now he's probably going to be fighting these unranked no-names at 125. It's a massive fall from grace. Andre Lima, unranked at 125, but he's on a 4-fight win streak in the UFC. He's looked better with every performance. I think he deserves someone in the top 15. And considering that Kaya Sakura is probably going to be ranked like number 13, and he's coming off a loss, you've kind of got to do that fight. I don't want to see Kai Sakura against someone in the top 10 anymore. I don't want to see him against like a Steve Erceg, because how has he earned it? He's 0-2 in the UFC. He's been finished in both of those. Let's give him Andre Lima. I think Lima is definitely the most favourable matchup Asakura's had in a while. You know, it's not like a heavy grappler, a heavy submission artist. I mean, like I said, the dude's literally unranked, so I definitely favour Asakura to win that fight. But if Andre Lima does win, well, I mean, you've lost your star in Kai Sakura, but at least you've got this new prospect at 125 and Andre Lima, who's undefeated as well. So Asakura, give him one of these prospects at 125. I think Andre Lima makes some sense for Asakura next. Get that fight done. Kai Sakura, Andre Lima, or just any unranked 125. Like, if you do Kai Sakura versus like Lonnie Kavanaugh or Charles Johnson, I think that could also be a shout. So Asakura, get him outside the top 15. And for Tim Elliott, 40 years old at flyweight, and he's still going strong as he's on a 2-fight winning streak with 2 finishes in a row. Fuck it, let's do Tim Elliott versus Amir Albazi. I don't see why this fight shouldn't be made next. Tim Elliott just got a massive underdog win, submitting Kai Sakura as, like I said, a massive underdog at 40 years old, and he's on a winning streak. I think you've got to reward him now, and he's not only on a winning streak, but he's won 4 of his last 5 fights, with his only loss being to Makayev back in 2023. I think Tim Elliott deserves a bit of a step up now. And Amir Albazi, he's number 4 in the flyweight division. He's coming off a loss to Brandon Moreno. Before that, he robbed Kai Kara France, and he just had a main event booked against Tatsuro Taru where he pulled out on fight week. I think it's safe to say the UFC probably aren't going to be treating Albazi too nice after his recent antics. So it's going to be a bit of a step down for Amir Albazi, but it's not like a punishment necessarily. You know, it's still Tim Elliott. It's probably the most winnable fight Albazi's had in a while, and I would favour him to win this fight, but you never know. If Tim Elliott beats Albazi, Tim Elliott being in the top 5 of flyweight would be crazy. So I think we give Tim Elliott the opportunity. You know, he's on a 2-fight winning streak. He's won 4 of his last 5. 2-fight finish streak, should I add. Let's give him someone in the top 5. Give him Albazi, who's coming off a loss, who's pulled out of fights, who needs a bit of a step down now. Elliott, Albazi, get that fight done. Probably shouldn't be on any big cards, because I'm going to be honest, it probably won't be the best fight. Maybe you do it for like an Apex main card or something. Elliott, Albazi, get the fight done. I think it makes sense, and it's a fairly decent step up for Tim Elliott. Jared Cannonier. Now, I don't think this is necessary for Cannonier. I don't think this is like an obvious thing that has to happen. But I don't mind the idea of retirement next for Jared Cannonier. Again, I'm not saying he desperately needs to retire, but at this point, he's 41 years old. He's 41 years of age. He's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. I know he finished Rodriguez in his last fight, but he's not a top contender. He's also lost to MVP as well. At this point, what is Jared Cannonier actually in the UFC for? Because he even said leading up to the MVP fight that the only reason that fight was made was because the UFC threatened him with getting cut from the UFC if he doesn't take it. So it's pretty evident that the UFC don't really care about Cannonier that much. And you look at his career itself, like, he's not a top contender. You know, he lost to Imavov, he lost to Barallo, he lost to, obviously just lost to MVP as well, lost to Adesanya a couple of years back. It's obviously he's not a top contender. He's not one of these super active fighters as well. I just don't understand what's in it for Cannonier anymore. You've had your career. And, listen, again, I'm not saying he's not going to be competitive against the top 15. Like I said, it was only a fight ago when he main evented and finished Gregor Rodriguez. So I'm not saying he can't be competitive. But at this point, I just don't really think there's too much in it. So I think for Jared Cannonier, the idea of retirement isn't that bad of an idea. He's definitely slowing down. Maybe even like a retirement fight on a certain card. I don't think it's bad for Cannonier, but yeah, Jared Cannonier, I think retirement could be an option next, or at least a retirement. The idea of retirement, I think, should be next for Jared Cannonier. And then for MVP, there's a certain matchup that I've got, and I think a lot of people have an idea of, that it's kind of like a controversial fight, and it's MVP versus Israel Adesanya. Now, this is one of those fights that I feel like is one of those fantasy fights on paper that everybody wants to see, but when you really look at the fight itself and break it down, it could also go down as one of those boring fights you can make in the UFC. 2 magnets repelling against each other. But I feel like the only reason I booked this fight is because you just fucking have to, man. It's one of those fantasy fights. Even before MVP was in the UFC, imagine MVP versus Adesanya, Izzy versus MVP. And to be fair to them, yes, they're both past their prime, but it's still a fight that I kind of want to see. MVP, one of the most unique strikers in mixed martial arts right now, one of the most tricky fighters to deal with on the feet. And so was Adesanya in his prime. Nobody could really outstrike Adesanya in his prime. He was, again, one of the most difficult strikers to deal with. 2 very lanky strikers at middleweight. MVP is now 2-0 in the middleweight division with 2 decent wins. Adesanya's on a 3-fight losing streak, just got knocked out by Imavov, so it makes sense from a ranking perspective. And I feel like I want to see this fight because it's like, fuck it. MVP Adesanya, it's a fantasy fight that we've now got the opportunity to make. It makes sense. Yes, it could be boring. Yes, it could be, 50 minutes of nothing happening. I wouldn't make this as like a main event. I would not make this for 25 minutes. I would make it for 15 minutes, like a common event of a pay-per-view or something. But MVP and Adesanya, I think, it's one of those fantasy fights you just have to see. Similar to like an MVP versus Stephen Thompson. Yes, that could be a boring fight, but you just have to see it. I just want, like, fuck it. MVP, Adesanya, fantasy fight, get it done. Let's see what happens. And even if it is a boring fight, right? I don't think anyone's expecting this to be a banger, but I think it would still be interesting to see how Adesanya deals with MVP. Because obviously, like I said, Adesanya, I know he's fallen off, but he historically has been kind of known as one of the best strikers in the UFC. I want to see how he responds to a guy as tricky as MVP on the feet. Neither of them have to worry about grappling. MVP is a let's see the fight, just because why the fuck not? And if MVP can win, you know, we've got a new top contender in the middleweight division. Anyway, Jeff Neal knocked out by Carlos Prates. He's going to need to fight outside the top 15. I think a fight that makes a shit ton of sense is Jeff Neal versus Randy Brown. I think it's time to give Randy Brown somewhere in the top 15 of the welterweight division. Jeff Neal obviously just got brutally knocked out by Carlos Prates. I think the first time he's been knocked out in his career as well. Randy Brown, on the other hand, has just brutally knocked out Nicholas Dalby, slept him out cold in probably one of his career best performances. And to be fair to Randy Brown, you look at his record, this guy needs someone in the top 15. He's winning fights so consistently. You look at his 2 losses in his last like 10 fights. One of them was to JDM, the literal champion of the division, and the other one was to Brian Battle, a robbery where Brian Battle missed weight. Apart from that, Randy Brown's been looking good. I think he deserves someone in the top 15, and the fact that Jeff Neal is going to be number 12 by Tuesday, and he's on, obviously he's just been finished, he's going to have to fight outside the ranking, so I think it makes ultimate sense. Jeff Neal versus Randy Brown. Randy Brown, tall, lanky striker, really good striker on the feet, he's a bit chinny though, and for Jeff Neal, I've always said he's one of the better boxers at 170, struggles against these lankier guys like Randy Brown, so I just want to see the fight. Jeff Neal, Randy Brown, step down for Jeff Neal, step up for Randy Brown, give him someone in the top 15, 2 strikers. Let's see the fight. I think it makes sense. And for Carlos Prates, the guy's turned 30 years old. Give him what he asked for. Carlos Prates versus Leon Edwards. I think this fight, from literally every point of view, makes sense. I don't see why this wouldn't be the fight next. I think there's a lot of fights that make sense for Leon Edwards. I think him like a Michael Morales makes sense next. But Prates, Edwards, let's see the fight. Prates just brutalized Jeff Neal out cold. And I said this in the breakdown as well. I think Carlos Prates is the most dangerous guy in the welterweight division right now. He rocks the mic with his fighting nerd glasses after, calls out Leon Edwards, and I don't see why not. Carlos Prates just knocked out Jeff Neal. He's going to want someone in the top 5. Leon Edwards is on a 2-fight losing streak to show Brady, and Bilal Muhammad is going to have to fight down. I think it makes sense from the rankings. And both of these guys should be wanting the fight like this. For Carlos Prates, it's a winnable fight against Leon Edwards. You know, it's another striker. I think Prates would probably win this fight because of the output that he has and the fact that he's more dangerous than Leon. And if he does beat Leon, he's going to be in the top 5, probably a win away from a title fight. So I think, you know, from that, for Carlos Prates' point of view, it makes sense. And for Leon Edwards, you should be trying to get fights like Carlos Prates, because you look at Leon's most recent fights, all he's been getting is grapplers. Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, you know, Bilal Muhammad, Sean Brady. All Leon has been getting is grapplers at 170. Let's give him a striker. Let's give him Carlos Prates. Let's see how Leon does when he has a pure striker in front of him. Somebody who isn't going to shoot takedowns. Let's see what Leon's really made of. Because if Leon goes out there, for all we know, he could put in an absolute masterclass on Carlos Prates across 15 minutes or 25 minutes and show us that he is still one of the better dudes at 170. So I just think it makes sense. Leon needs to fight down, a step down. Let's give him a striker. Prates wants to step up. Let's give him a striker. He called for the co-main event of the Brazil card in October. I think if there's probably too quick of a turnaround, I can't see Leon Edwards accepting it for that soon. But either way, even if it's not in the Brazil card, Prates versus Leon, let's see the fight. Makes sense. We need to see some of these guys, some of these strikers matched up against each other at 170 when it's a division literally dominated by grapplers. So let's see it. Prates Leon. And then for Aaron Pico, once again, as it seems to be a bit of a theme in 2025, another fighter who came over from a different big organization in the UFC to the UFC and failed. So for Aaron Pico, let's see him against somebody who has had a very similar career path to him recently. Patricio Pitbull. 2 guys who are hyped up outside the UFC and have come over to the UFC and haven't had the best start. But to be fair to Aaron Pico, he didn't look that bad against Leroy Murphy. Like, he looked pretty good against Leroy Murphy, and he was winning the fight until he obviously got brutally knocked out with the second spinning back elbow of the night as he got slept out cold by Leroy Murphy. And to be fair to Patricio Pitbull, obviously lost to Yair in his debut, but he is coming off a win over Danige, so he's going to want a bit of a step up in competition. And I think it makes sense. It's a step down for Pico, it's a step up for Pitbull. 2 guys who are known for to be some of the best guys outside of the UFC. So let's see. And I think Pico would definitely win this fight. I think it's a good opportunity for Pico, because he did look good against Leroy Murphy, and I still kind of do think that Pico has potential in this division, because like I said, he was looking good against Murphy. So let's see how he does against Pitbull, someone that's obviously top 15 worthy, maybe not top 10 worthy. Another guy who's been hyped up outside the UFC. Pico, Pitbull, Bellator fight that takes place in the UFC. Let's see that fight. And for Leroy Murphy, went out there and brutally knocked out Aaron Pico. And if there is a performance to give you a title fight, if there is a title fight earning performance out there, that is it. Fuck it. Lerone Murphy versus Alexander Volkanovski. I'm not mad against this, the idea of this fight taking place next. I think Lerone Murphy, with that performance he just had against Aaron Pico, he stole the title fight. I know you've got Movsar everywhere, but to be fair, Lerone Murphy's also undefeated. Lerone Murphy's also on a win streak. The only difference between the two of them is Lerone Murphy stole the fight with Pico from Evloev, and he made a highlight reel out of it. You've also got Gene Silva if he can beat Diego Lopez, but obviously that fight has to actually happen first. You've got Yair Rodriguez, but he shouldn't be anywhere near the title talks anytime soon. You look at Lerone Murphy, he's on a massive winning streak in the UFC, 4 ranked wins at the time, just stole on short notice the opportunity against Pico from Evloev and knocked out Aaron Pico. And like I said, if there is a performance out there that deserves you a title fight, that is it. Knocking out Pico in that fashion on short notice in a co-main event. I don't mind Lerone Murphy versus Volkanovski. Book that fight to keep Volkanovski active. Maybe you do that fight in November or December. In the meantime, Evloev recovers. Gene Silva solidifies himself as the next contender, and you get the division moving. So Murphy, Rodriguez, get the fight done. I think that makes, Murphy, Volkanovski, get the fight done. I think it makes ultimate sense. You know what? I don't think Lerone Murphy has that bad of a chance against Volkanovski. And since Volk wants to stay active, November, December, Murphy, Volk, let's get the fight done. I think that's a really good fight. And then for Dricus du Plessis, lost to Khamzat Chimaev in super dominant fashion. I mean, 50-44. I mean, it's not necessarily something that DDP did bad. It's just that Chimaev was that good. So for DDP, let's see him against the loser of Imavov and Barallo. I want to see DDP against another top contender. I don't want to see him get too big of a step down in competition because, like I said, he lost to Chimaev. He lost to literally the best welterweight right now, and he was the defending champion as well. And if Imavov and Barallo is going to be a title eliminator, then why don't we do this kind of tournament thing where the winner of that fight gets the winner of DDP and Chimaev, obviously it being Chimaev, and the loser of that fight gets DDP. And I think they're two intriguing matchups. Imavov versus DDP. You've got DDP, one of the weirdest fighters in the division, against one of the most dangerous strikers in Imavov. And I think Barallo versus DDP, I've always said I think Barallo's stylistically quite difficult for DDP. So if he loses to Imavov, I think him and DDP could be fun too. So for Dricus du Plessis, I want to see him against the loser of Imavov and Barallo. I know we've got other guys on the come up like Anthony Hernandez, but I want to see Hernandez versus Reina Derrida. And apart from that, you haven't really got any massive contenders coming up middleweight. So DDP, give him the loser of Imavov and Barallo. It's a bit of a bounce back fight for both of those guys. I think that makes sense. And for Chimaev, obviously on the other hand of things, let him fight the winner of Imavov and Barallo. Imavov and Barallo, obviously, that is the #1 contender fight at 185 right now. It's been hyped up as the #1 contender fight, and for rightfully so. Imavov's on a 4-fight winning streak, just knocked out Adesanya. He arguably deserves the title fight right now. If he beats Barallo, definitely give him the next shot. And for Barallo, he's on a huge winning streak in the UFC. If he can beat the #1 guy in Imavov, he's going to be next in line. So whoever wins at UFC Paris, between Imavov, between Barallo, give them Khamzat Chimaev next. But you know what? It doesn't really matter who wins because I feel like with Chimaev, he's that so far ahead of the division, especially after that DDP performance. It doesn't really feel like who's next to challenge Chimaev. It's like who's the next victim of Chimaev? Who's Chimaev going to beat next? And it doesn't really matter between who wins between Imavov and Barallo. I feel like Chimaev's going to maul either of them. So those are the fights I make off the UFC 319. Let me know if you agree or disagree with the fights that I've made. If you change any fights around, let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching.